Good try, yes, that's a fun thing. Without it, where would we be?
Last year, last summer actually, we were in this fight together because Chevron said we want to upgrade our refinery. That's, that was their code word for expanding the pollution that they have been causing and making people sick with in the area. And so we had to fight that expansion and know that it's tied to what's happening globally with our climate, that Richmond, the Chevron refinery is actually like could be precedent setting around the world because our oil supplies are getting lower, and so what's at the bottom of the barrel is actually dirtier. And so with Chevron upgrading their equipment, it's really code for them wanting to refine the dirtier stuff, the heavier stuff. And so we knew that that was what they were doing, and so we had to stop that expansion.
Chevron is also a leader in shale oil development. Now the shale regions of the Midwest are in Colorado, Utah, Wyoming. And getting at shale is like getting at coal. You either remove the mountain above it or you burrow into the mountain to get at it. Shale is a rock that you have to heat and crush and dispose of the waste of using water and using very intensive practices to get to a teeny tiny bit of bitumen that is a heavier source of crude that at the end of the day can be refined into gasoline. It is an incredibly energy intensive process. Also, this region where the shale is taking place is coal country. So there's discussion of building coal-fired energy plants to produce the energy to do the shale oil mining.
Oh, okay.
Number one goal or demand is that we are asking for the refinery to end its expansion. That also means pipelines. That also means just more conscious about what their environmental impact is. The second demand is to keep the corporations out of Copenhagen. And then the third goal, which is always a great goal, is just to have cleaner air and an environment for the Bay Area, but specifically for Richmond.
So back in 1992, there was a meeting in Rio de Janeiro, the UN Conference on Environment and Development, and this was the first time within the UN framework that these two topics came together. And at that time, already governments had realized that climate change is a problem and had signed the UN framework on the Convention of Climate Change. And basically what this said is climate change is a problem. We want to be able to stabilize greenhouse gas emissions to prevent catastrophic climate change. But it didn't set any targets, and there was no enforcement mechanism. It was more or less just a statement. What came after that, which is probably more popular than the UNFCCC, is the Kyoto Protocol. And this was established in Kyoto in, I believe, 1997, and it actually established legal binding targets for developed nations. So what that means is it actually required developed countries or industrialized countries to reduce their emissions. And at that time, they set a target of, on average, 5% below emissions relative to 1990. And for this protocol to come into effect, it needed 55 countries to ratify the protocol, and that actually happened when Iceland signed on in 2002, but it had a second requirement. The second requirement is the countries that ratified the protocol must also represent 55% of emissions in 1990. And that was much harder to reach because most notably the world's largest historical polluter, the United States, didn't want to play. And so it took until 2005 when Russia finally ratified the protocol that it actually went into effect.
So we've just crossed a point in the world where we're now at the point where 50% of the world's oil is now heavy oil. What's left is the heavy oil. That is heavy in terms of what weighs down on it. What weighs down on it are the pollutants and the toxins that encase the oil. So what we've got left now, and increasingly so, will be that heavier more sulfur-rich, more toxin-laden types of oil. When you refine the heavier oil, you have to burn off all of that crud. When you burn off all of that crud, it has to go somewhere. It goes into the air, it goes into the water, it goes into the communities around the refineries.
Essentially, in 2012, the first commitment period will expire, and so governments are meeting to try and negotiate the next commitment period, which would begin in 2013. And that's why you're hearing a lot about Copenhagen, let's get a deal in Copenhagen. The meeting in Copenhagen is happening in December of 2009.
I'm going to lead with race. I think, sometimes it's like, okay, sometimes it worries us, so who are the folks and, what do the folks look like on the ground in Richmond? And then if you're successful, and we hope you are, of attracting all of these activists into Richmond for this climate convergence, that it's not totally going to look like the folks living next to the refineries, right? And so there's going to be a lot of white ally activists that are going to come and help us defeat Chevron, as well as the other, polluting facilities that are there. And so what is it that we ask you, How, I think we need to be really well coordinated, right? And that the leadership of the folks who are on the ground really need to be the leadership of this mobilization, because we live there.